The last broadcast. In the dying months of 1996, a modest public radio station nestled deep in the Appalachian woods of Black Hollow, West Virginia, quietly vanished from the airwaves. WVRK 103.1, little more than a blip on the FM dial, was known mostly to truckers passing through and to the handful of locals who still used radios instead of televisions. It was an odd station. Its programming didn't follow any recognizable format. Some nights it played folk songs from the 1920s. Other nights, distorted jazz pieces looped for hours. But the strangest thing was the voice, one low, gravelly, and slow, that would sometimes interrupt the music without introduction. It never gave a name. It just told stories. But on a fog-heavy Thursday night in October, mid-sentence during what sounded like a live interview, WVRK's signal glitched, stuttered, and fell silent. No outro. No goodbye. Just a long static breath. Then nothing. The station never returned. Emergency services dispatched to the location found a structure no larger than a hunting cabin, tucked behind a thicket of pines off an unmarked road. The door was unlocked, but no one was inside. The chair in the broadcasting booth still rocked, as if someone had just left. A half-drunk mug of coffee steamed gently on the windowsill. And on the console, a tape reel spun aimlessly. When authorities played the tape, they listened for hours. No official report was ever made public. All that was ever said was, equipment malfunction. No foul play suspected. But locals didn't believe that. Because people in Black Hollow remembered that station. And they remembered the stories it told, and the things it made them feel. Elijah Cross was the first to break the silence. In 2007, more than a decade later, Elijah came forward during a late-night podcast interview, visibly pale, trembling even in the safety of his own home. He claimed to be a former technician who had worked at WVRK during its final months. It was supposed to be a simple job, part-time audio cleanup and archiving. But from the beginning, he said, something felt wrong. According to Elijah, the station wasn't just broadcasting, it was receiving signals. Signals that came at odd hours, with no traceable source. And they didn't always arrive during the night. Sometimes, they'd filter in mid-afternoon, like whispers bleeding through the walls. Some were garbled. Others were, clearer. Human voices. Crying. Laughter. Chanting. Sometimes what sounded like conversations between two people, or between a person and something pretending to be one. Each audio file was labeled and catalogued, entries, they called them. Numbered. Stored on reel-to-reel tapes in a locked cabinet beneath the booth. Elijah listened to every one. It was his job. And though most were no longer than 30 seconds, some were disturbing enough to make him sleep with the lights on for days. He described one entry in particular, entry number 63, as the turning point. The night he knew something had followed him home. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, close to midnight. Elijah sat alone in the booth, headphones on, digitizing entry number 63. The recording began as soft footsteps, pacing slowly on what sounded like dirt or gravel. Then came a quiet, almost reluctant voice. But it was his voice. "Don't look at the window," it whispered. At first, Elijah thought it was a prank. A loop or a mistake. But he had never recorded those words. And he hadn't been on the tapes. He took off the headphones, heart racing, and that's when the knocking started. 3 knocks. Heavy. Deliberate. From inside the building. But the station was locked. And he was alone. He searched every room. Nothing. No one. Just the hum of old electronics and the wind pressing against the cabin's walls. When he returned to the booth, the tape had stopped spinning. And the console lights were off. That night, Elijah left WVRK and never returned. But the knocking didn't stay behind. For 3 nights in a row, he heard it. At home. In the walls. Always at 3:33 a.m. He moved states before the week was over. Changed his phone number. Never told anyone, until that interview. Years later, a curious amateur paranormal investigator named Marla Wren took interest in the story. She had grown up in neighboring Bell County and remembered hearing the static-laced songs from WVRK on her parents' old car radio. Marla set out to find the abandoned station. But WVRK had been erased from most maps. Its coordinates removed. Old city records had no listing. Even local postal routes skipped the property. Still, after weeks of digging and a few offhand conversations with locals who remembered, she found it, what remained of it. The cabin had collapsed under the weight of years and overgrowth. But behind a warped cabinet door in the floor, she discovered something far stranger, a hatch. It led underground. Marla described the space as cold. Stale. The walls lined with old soundproofing foam, blackened by moisture. Dozens of tapes were stored neatly in labeled boxes, each marked with simple numbers and dates. But the back room is what chilled her. There was a single chair, bolted to the floor. Shackles attached to the arms and legs. A rusted microphone dangled from the ceiling above it. Someone, or something, had been meant to stay there. She retrieved one tape before the structure gave way and collapsed beneath her. A broken leg and shattered phone later, she managed to crawl back to the road. But the tape, she kept safe. When she played it, she heard what can only be described as a man screaming. "It's wearing my face," the voice shrieked. "Tell them it's wearing my face." Then static. Then a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the walls. WVRK never returned to the airwaves. The FCC listed it as permanently closed. But in 2014, a pirate station by the same name began transmitting. No location. No contact. Just ghostly music, indecipherable muttering, and fragments of what many believe are the lost entries. Listeners who tune in after 3:30 a.m. report something strange. A voice that sounds just like theirs, whispering back through the speaker. Saying things they've never said. Words that don't feel like their own, until they do. Some report dreams, visions of a dark room, a red light blinking, a tape recorder whirring. Others say they've started hearing knocking in their homes. Always 3 times. Always at the same hour. Always, from inside the walls. If you're hearing this, maybe it's already begun for you. Maybe you're already being tuned in. And if you hear a voice, your voice, telling you not to look at the window, you should listen. Because whatever's out there, might already be inside.